In studio, we have Senator Rob Ortt. Let me give you a little bit of background about Rob. Born in North Tonawanda, served in the military, and this is extremely important to me anyways. In October of 2001, he enlisted in the New York Army National Guard. After the September 11th attack, he then served in the war in Afghanistan, and he won the Bronze Star Medal, Army Accommodation Medal, Afghanistan Campaign Medal, and the Combat Infantry Badge, all of those honors. This is a stellar individual who was the mayor of North Tonawanda, then ran for the Senate and won that office and took over in January of 2015, and then in 2020 was elected the minority leader of the Senate. Rob, I'm so happy to have you here today.
Great to be here with you, Chairman Larigo. I'm happy to be here.
So, Rob, what we want to kind of focus on, there are a lot of issues, but the budget obviously was this week. Kathy Hochul presented her budget, not with a lot of depth, but she presented a budget. So tell us a little bit about the budget and what, if she hit anything important. I just don't see her as being deep and getting a lot of this accomplished. But tell us a little bit about the budget.
Sure. So and this can be very confusing, I know, to a lot of folks. So she gave her State of the State this week. The budget address is going to be on Tuesday.
Okay.
So, and you're right about her State of the State of the States for many years now that I've been in Albany, especially with this governor, are really just, as you can appreciate, maybe some of your listeners don't always maybe know the difference. The State of the State is sort of like, if I was king for a day, here's what I might do, right? And there's a lot of big prognostications and big ideas, or at least that's the point of it. But they're low on substance, as you put. They're sort of a mile wide and an inch deep. That's sort of what this State of the State was pretty. I thought, other than her comments about ICE and her sort of alignment or further alignment with Zoran Mamdani about resisting ICE and not working with the federal government, and she made the comment about pushing forward some kind of legislation to allow people to sue individual ICE agents. So things like that are concerning. There's not a lot of details, but those are concerning comments by the governor, because when you have elected officials who say that, it only inflames an already tense situation. It makes it more dangerous for the ICE agents, and I would tell you it makes it more dangerous for the people on the ground, even those who might align themselves with Governor Hochul's political philosophy. So, but outside of that, she talked about affordability a lot, and I know we're going to talk about that today. And she kept talking about, we got to make New York more affordability. There's an affordability crisis. She never talked about why. She had talked about how things are expensive in New York. Childcare is expensive.
But she's been talking about it for years.
Well, for several years. And at the same time, she's been passing or signing legislation, whether it's environmental legislation, energy legislation, tax policy, regulatory policy. All of those things have contributed to New York getting more expensive under her watch, under one-party Democratic control in New York. New York State today spends $84 billion more than it did in 2019.
That is where it's incredible. I mean, people just have to try to grasp what that is.
Right.
So in 6 years, she's increased the budget by $84 billion.
That's right.
And what percentage increase is that? I mean, that's a substantial percentage increase.
It's a huge increase. I'll tell you this. It is larger than 36 other states' total budgets. Just the increase.
Just the increase.
Not our budget. Our budget obviously is one of the larger. It's got to be top 3 or 4 in the country. But their idea of solving affordability is to just keep saying the word affordability. I think they think that will make things less expensive for people. But they're going to argue over how much to increase taxes this budget. Starting on Tuesday. They're going to argue over these energy timelines and the CLCPA and these all new New York's Green New scam policy that has increased people's utility rates by over 50% since it was adopted in 2019.
So there we are, 2019. She's talking about affordability for several years, but the kind of programs that they put into place,
correct,
do the opposite.
Do the exact opposite. They passed a Farm Fair Labor Act, which will increase the cost of farmers who have to pass that on in their costs, making our farmers less competitive. We've seen obviously increases at the grocery store. They want to do this extended packaging bill, which would ban, your Lunchable, the Lunchables you buy at the grocery store, the plastic container, the Kraft singles slice. All those things would be banned. All this packaging that would increase further prices at the grocery store. So all of these kinds of policies, high taxes, more spending, more regulations, that is what people talk about housing. She talked about housing in her statement, right? And that's an issue.
That's a big deal.
That's a big deal, no question. But she never says, why is housing so much more expensive to build in New York than it is in other states? Why? Because if we don't answer the why, we have to ask and we have to answer it. If we don't, we'll never get to the actual root cause and better public policy.
But the electric mandate that they want to put into place, and she's put on pause because politically she's running and she doesn't want people to realize what it really is. But the electric mandate has increased the price of housing. We had Phil Nanula on here by $15,000, $25,000 just to build and then to maintain.
That's right. And Phil knows this. He's been a great sort of spokesperson on this from the industry side, right? Somebody who says, look, people who build housing, now whether you're building an apartment unit in New York City or you're building single-family homes here in Western New York, you know how they make money? They make money by building housing.
Right.
So these folks want to build. They want to construct new units.
Right.
The reason they don't is because they think they can't move them all because they know the price is so high now. And we have added construction costs. Now, New York State can't always control the cost of materials, right? That's sort of a national or even global issue. But we can decide, all these mandates, all these regulatory burdens make the cost of building a house in New York significantly higher, and certainly in New York City, where they even have more regulations than in other places. And on the energy piece, I'll tell people who are listening, because I know there's people who are listening, and it's easy to blame the utilities. And I'm not here to stump for the utilities. Okay, that's not what I do. But I will tell you this: if you think that utilities, it's really they're just greedy and they're trying to make as much money as they can. Okay, let's accept that premise for a moment. But that would mean that the utility companies are the same greedy utility companies in Pennsylvania as they are in New York, right? They're both trying to make. Sometimes they are the same utility, but they're both trying to make in Philadelphia or in Pennsylvania. Their energy costs are up to 35% less than in New York. So same utility companies, they're trying to make the same money, but they can charge up to 35% less. Why? Because of the policies coming out of Albany versus the policies coming out of Harrisburg.
It's incredible. So in the late 80s, early 90s, I actually, with a partner, built 72 townhouses. Oh. We were building townhouses at $47 a square foot. Today, it is about $240 a square foot because of the costs. Now, again, like you said, some of those we can't control because of, but there are plenty of things that have increased in price solely because of governmental regulations.
That's right.
What the Democrats have done. The energy situation, I'm just concerned that people don't really understand what the bill is.
Right.
And as much as...
or how it's arrived at. Right.
Right. I mean, but what they've said is that anything under 7 stories, so it really doesn't affect New York City that much.
Sure.
Anything under 7 stories was supposed to have to be all electric starting January 1st.
Correct.
Now, she put a pause on that, in my opinion, solely because this is an election year, and she doesn't want people to realize it. But they're going to do it if she gets elected.
Yes.
They're absolutely going to do it if she gets elected. And, people will pay substantially more, plus the grid can't handle it.
That's right.
So more people. I mean, people died in Buffalo as a result of utilities going out, electric going out.
Yep.
People died, and that's what we're facing still.
Yeah, it's really a policy divorced from reality.
Right.
It's a policy that to some folks on the environmental side of things, it sounds like we're doing a good thing. We're trying to lower emissions. Just so people understand, New York State accounts for 0.04% of global emissions. So all of these policies, I don't know, maybe we'll knock off another 0.01%, so we'll be at 0.03. Maybe we'll even get to 0.02. But what does that do? It does very minimal for the planet as far as what you're trying.
Right.
But it will do huge damage to New York's economy, to New York's business climate, to New York's housing market. And we know that one of the biggest threats to New York State that the Democrats don't talk about is the loss of human capital to the state of New York. We have employers and employees who are leaving this state, and they're leaving this state for things or because of things like we're talking about right here.
So, I mean, I've certainly looked at the statistics of 1.7 million people leaving New York State over the last several years. But one of the things I found out about in my law office recently is the estate exemption in New York.
Okay.
So New York has an estate exemption of $7,350,000. Now, I'm sure that sounds like a great deal of money to most people, and it certainly is to most Western New Yorkers, but it isn't to New York City people whose apartments can cost $4 or $5 million.
Right.
So here's the craziness. Up to $7,350,000, you pay no estate tax in New York. But there's something called the cliff. If you have 5% more than that, there's no exemption whatsoever.
Right.
So if you had $7.8 million in your estate, you would have zero exemption. You'd have 16% tax. If you're a person of means, of wealth in New York, you're not going to want to die in New York. I mean, you have a $15 million federal exemption that doesn't have a cap on it. Your first $15 million, each of the two spouses is exempt. But in New York, you have $7,350,000, and then if you have 5% more, you have zero exemption. That's not true in any other state that I'm aware of, that the exemption simply goes away. And when you look at New York City, I just can't believe that anybody with any means is going to, want to die in New York. They're going to go to Florida, any of these states that have no estate tax.
Well, and they are, right? I mean, we know that
they
are going. I mean, that's the thing. People, Long Island, very similar. Obviously they have these, some big houses. You said something interesting there, though, is that we're losing these folks. Obviously they're not going to want to die in New York. I represent a lot of people. They also don't want to die in New York, but they don't have the means to maybe leave.
Right.
And that person deserves, policies that allow them to flourish either here, hopefully, or, make their life better while they are here. And very often, while the Democrats will say things like, we're passing these things for working people or folks who are on the margins, very often, despite that intent or that political statement, the reality is they make it harder for those very people that they claim to try to be helping.
All right, we're gonna take a short break here. We're gonna come back and we're going to talk about Western New York and your district and how these things affect Western New Yorkers. Rob Ortt, the minority leader in the New York State Senate. So, Rob, tell us about the numbers. So there are 63 senators.
Yep.
How many Dems? How many Rs?
So there are currently 39 Democrats because there's two vacancies. Senator Hoylman became the Manhattan Borough president down in New York City, so he vacated. And, of course, here in Western New York, Sean Ryan became the mayor of Buffalo, so that is currently empty. So there are 39 Democrats currently and 22 Republicans.
So only 22. At one point, not that long ago, we had the majority.
When I was elected, so I took office in 2015, we had 33 Republicans.
Yeah.
And then we went down to 32. And then in 2018,
Yep.
A bad night for Republicans. Certainly here in New York, I would say probably in the northeastern part of the United States, it certainly was. We lost 8 seats, and that has been, trying to dig out of that hole has not been easy. We went down to as low as 20.
Yeah.
And now we're up to 22.
So again, when we had the Senate, we had bargaining power. And, the state then was certainly a Democratic state,
Yep.
but we had leverage. We had bargaining power.
Yes.
Now, what I say is what the Democrats, what they want to accomplish, we do because we can. It's as simple as that. Not because it's necessary, not because it benefits the constituents. We do because we can.
Yes.
Because they got all these votes.
Right. You're in charge. So, in their argument, particularly from the far left, and people obviously should know this, I'm sure they do, New York State, especially down towards the city, you have some of the most radical elements of the Democratic Party nationally coming out of that part of the state, right?
Yeah.
Right here in New York, quote unquote. And so their argument is it's a national fight, where it's not about New Yorkers. We have to do these things because it's about pushing back against President Trump. It's about pushing back against Texas or some, Florida. And so the argument, to your point, is you're in charge. We don't know. Maybe that might not last forever. So we might as well go as far politically left as we can, simply because we can and we have the power to do so.
But it shocks me that in this day and age, Democrats would be willing to call themselves socialists. Openly.
Right.
I mean, look, I'm an older guy at this point in time, but through all the decades of my life, that could never be. I mean, Democrats would never touch that word.
We would say it as a negative. It was a pejorative term, right?
It was a negative term, and yet there are people who wear it as a badge today.
I don't know, because I'm of the age where I remember sort of the tail end of the Cold War, and I certainly remember, in to your point, that socialists, that would be like a negative that conservatives or Republicans or even just Americans, because socialism was tied to the Russians, the Soviets, the Cubans,
exactly.
Kind of our enemies were socialists, right? And now this younger generation, maybe because they've lost that context because they were born so long after that. But I also think most people, I don't know if most people even really, if you ask them what is a socialist, they probably couldn't actually tell you.
Well, that term is softened.
Yes.
So I became chairman, and I got involved in 1981, but I became chairman in 1991. And again, Democrats came to us and asked for the conservative
100%.
Endorsement, especially here in Western New York.
100%, yep.
They would never, ever, ever consider themselves a socialist. So I think the term has lost some of its meaning to younger people especially.
Yep.
But they brag about it. It shocks me. And then when I see people like Mondami or Sean Ryan, Sean Ryan winning Buffalo, it concerns me.
Well, it should be concerning. I know there are some people who take the approach that, well, Mamdani winning, it's good for, meaning politically, it's good for, for Republicans or for people because it presents a stark contrast. I get that, but probably like you, and I would the concern is it also emboldens people to go, you know what? That's how you got to go to
exactly.
win. And I think it's going to encourage some people on the left and sort of the grassroots activist types. It's going to embolden them to say we can win. If we can win the mayor of New York City, the largest city in the country, then we can. And don't forget, India Walton almost became first mayor of, or the first socialist mayor in the country several years ago. So they're knocking at the door. I think of those movies, where they're at the castle walls with the, with the giant log and they're pounding. They're there. They're outside the walls. And
I wish they were outside.
Well, they might be inside the walls now. Yeah, you're right. That might be true too.
So let me ask you a question, Senator. Sure. Kathy Hochul has a State of the State address. Does the media allow the state senate or to have a State of the State address from the minority point of view?
So it's not so much a question of the media allowing it. We do it. We actually We rolled out a preview of our agenda ahead of her State of the State, obviously to try to, and we had a lot of media, the Albany media, that were there. I had several local media reach out to me to get my reaction to the governor's State of the State, and then we actually, Senator Chan, who's a Republican senator from Brooklyn, he gave the official sort of response, the Senate Republican response to the governor's State of the State, which was shared widely on social media and platforms like that. So there is a response, but kind of like the State of the Union, there's no sort of rival speech on that kind of level because.
Well, let me ask you this: have you thought about a David Letterman top 10 list?
Yeah.
In terms of policy, easy to understand, sort of the Newt Gingrich style contract with America, but it's a contract with New Yorkers.
Right.
That 10 things you would do if you took over the majority of the state, whether it be energy, education policy, Medicaid, and maybe some people don't know this, but New York's Medicaid costs, ladies and gentlemen, actually exceeds California's and Texas combined.
That's true.
There's twice as many people in California as are in New York State right now.
And there's more people in Texas.
And if you add California's Medicaid to Texas's Medicaid, New York is more. Mm-hmm. Now, how do you square that with common sense?
Well, you don't. That's the only answer I can come up with. So we do have that top 10 list that you talked about. We have our version of a contract with New York. We actually came up initially with that last year. We have it again now, going forward into this election cycle. And it covers a range of sort of issues and basically things that if Republicans were to regain the Senate, and we're hoping that our gubernatorial candidate, Bruce Blakeman, that he would pick up that list, or at least some items on that list as part of his campaign, so that people, I think they do need to understand what would Republicans do in a crystal clear way. Don't get way into the weeds. Give me 5, 6, 7 things that you would do tomorrow if you were in charge, and they're very common sense things and things that I think most New Yorkers support. To your question about the Medicaid spending, the amazing thing that I've had this debate with some people in the media, and everyone will tell you those numbers that you cited, and they will say New York's Medicaid it's unsustainable, right? You can't continue to spend that much more than the number 2 state, number 3 state in the country. And yet, you will hear Democrats talk about we need more money in Medicaid. And it's like, well, both of those things can't be true. You can't, on one hand, acknowledge that our Medicaid program is spending way too much money. There is no doubt there is fraud, waste, and abuse ripe in that program. Substantial. We're talking like hundreds of millions of dollars, because that's how much we spend, that would still only amount to 15 or 20% of what the total budget is. But then on top of it, you can't say, okay, there's fraud, we got to be better stewards of tax dollars, we can't keep spending, but then we need more money in that exact program. So what I have told people coming and asking me for more Medicaid is, until we get a hold of this program and root out some of this waste, fraud, and abuse, and get this program more in line. And I think part of the issue is New York just allows the federal government, as most of your listeners may know, the federal government mandates a certain number of things that have to be Medicaid eligible. Mm-hmm. Then they allow several other things that are Medicaid eligible if the state so chooses. New York State simply chooses.
You got to opt in.
You got to opt in. We opt in to, I think, almost all of the menu items.
Every one of them.
And so instead of funding 10 things at 80%, we fund 30 things at 30%. So we're not even funding some of these things as much as other states, and yet we're spending way more than these other states. And so, again, it goes back to New York elected officials, and in this case, the governor, Democrats in charge, have to make a choice and have to show some political will and political courage to say, we have got to get a hold of this program. And if they don't, then New Yorkers have to say, we got to get a hold of this program.
I don't see them ever saying that, because that is their mantra.
Yeah.
They are pandering to have-nots.
Yep.
And the problem is, and I have, I say this every time that I bring it up. We certainly, all of us, you absolutely believe in a safety net. None of us would say there shouldn't be a safety net. We absolutely, positively believe there should be a safety net for people that can't work, for people, young women who have children that can't work.
Right.
There has to be a safety net. We all agree to that. But there are so many capable people, capable of working, who maneuver the system and get on the public doles.
And I'll go you one better, Chairman, is not even the end user. There is a ton of money in this program that simply go to different companies and not-for-profits so they can hire people and they can have a job and a place in the world. And it's not even, the money doesn't even really end up helping someone. It helps somebody start a not-for-profit or have a job at an agency or basically make money off the taxpayer while providing little tangible benefit to the actual folks that we're trying to help.
These are all buying votes.
Yes. Yes.
That's what this is. These are pandering to buy votes, and they never raise these people above those levels.
Not at all.
They don't give a hand up.
No.
They want you to stay at those levels generation after generation, because then you're dependent on government and you're dependent on what they want to say, the Democrats.
No
because
doubt.
the Democrats have a heart and Republicans have a brain.
Correct. Yeah, correct. I mean, the brain apparently is not as sexy or as empathetic as the heart, I suppose, is, right? So
yeah, I'd like to return to the utility costs.
Yep.
And talk about Kathy Hochul a week or two ago actually had a press conference with the Premier of Ontario about atomic energy. And ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. They didn't accept any questions after the announcements because they had no answers. Bringing atomic energy into Western New York or New York State is at least 10 years away, given all of the regulations that have to be followed. And yet, New York is awash with energy in the Marcellus Shale in the central part of New York. Yep. All they got to do is stick a hole in the ground and come up with natural gas. And it's clean, and it's environmentally safe, and it will provide tens of thousands of jobs that would average about $100,000 a job. How do you square that with the energy needs of the state and the refusal of Kathy Hochul and her compatriots to want to actually do the practical things that will bring energy into the state? We already have it. It's under the ground.
So I square it by saying that the governor, her allies, and the Democratic Party has this is not a... There are very few Democrats in the New York State or nationally who are willing or politically have the courage to have a real discussion about energy, because this has become almost like a religious zealotry for those in the far left. If you take any other position other than we need to go all electric, we need to end fossil fuel, we need to end natural gas, we need to end the big energy industry, and I'm talking about their goal is to end these companies. They don't want BP, ExxonMobil, National Fuel. They want those companies out of business because they've made the determination that somehow is victory, that somehow is better for the planet. And if you're not going all electric, and if you're not going all wind and solar, and if you're not reducing the human population and energy consumption, then you're wrong. And it is a frightening proposition. But to your point, now, I support nuclear power. I mean, I support the idea of nuclear power. I also support natural gas and some fossil fuel as a bridge as we're investing in technologies and trying to get to a new future and a more, sustainable, cheaper future. But the reality is our energy policy is exporting jobs and importing energy from Canada, from New Jersey, from Pennsylvania. I was made aware of a conversation that just happened between a local official here in Western New York and someone in Canada, and he said, we're going to sell you power when you guys run out because we're not using the power under our feet, and at some point, we're not going to be able to power the state of New York on wind, solar, and electricity alone.
We're here with one of our best representatives, someone who can articulate our position better than most anybody else, who has risen in the ranks and is now the minority leader of the New York State Senate, Senator Rob Ortt. So, Rob, what about, Kathy Hochul? I've known this woman for decades, actually.
Yeah.
This is a woman who, in Hamburg, had the conservative endorsement. She identified herself as a conservative Democrat.
Yep.
She did the same when she ran for county clerk. She then ran for Congress in the reddest district in the state. Had an A rating from the NRA.
Yep.
She was against when Cuomo wanted to give licenses to illegal immigrants.
Yep.
Here's a woman who is now bought and sold by the liberal downstate Democrats, catering now to Mayor Mondami.
Yep. Yeah, I think the unfortunate part about that progression, and we've seen that movie before with someone like Kirsten Gillibrand when she was a member of Congress.
I was going to raise
There's
that.
another, right? We see this a lot where these folks climb the ladder being sort of a conservative Democrat or a moderate even Democrat.
Right.
And people go, you know what, that's what we need more of, so they even get Republican votes.
Right.
Kathy Hochul really made her real name back when she defied Governor Spitzer, and she said, I will call ICE. I will call ICE if someone shows up here wanting a driver's license. Now she's telling people, go after ICE. I mean, you can't think of a 180 turn like that in politics. And it's not like it happened over 50 years. We're talking about in the span of like a decade and a half this has occurred for her. And it's really, I think it's a sellout of Western New York. Because I think when she was climbing up there, and, county clerk, Congress, I think in some ways she was reflecting a lot of Democrats in Western New York, right? That they weren't necessarily as far to the left. But now that she's the governor of New York, she knows that New York City is just such a radically different place, and she kowtows to the legislative leaders and the people down in Manhattan and Brooklyn, rather than sort of acting like, look, I'm the governor for the whole state, and while I represent you, I have to represent people in Western New York too. She just kowtows to them. So if you really want to know who's running the state, it's not Kathy Hochul. It is the far left. It is Zoran Mamdani and his allies in New York City.
So tell me about universal daycare in New York.
I can only tell you that she wants to do it. I know a couple years ago we did universal pre-K, right?
Yeah.
That was, and several years later, not everyone had pre, so it wasn't very universal apparently, right? So they use these terms, and then very often the substance doesn't really match the selling point. But there was not a lot of details other than she said child care is very expensive in New York, which we all know.
Clearly it is.
Clearly it is, no question. She didn't say why. She talked about making a new office. She talked about making a regulatory framework. If you talk to most daycare providers on the phone or in person, they will tell you right now the reason their costs are so high is because of the regulatory framework in New York State. That drives up their cost, their liability, which means they have to pass that on.
One individual for every 7 kids.
The ratios.
The ratios, that is problem. Where the costs are.
100%. And now the other question I have for her is, because this wasn't answered, are we going to just provide, is it going to be a daycare service? In other words, do you have to show that you actually go to work? Because I don't think we should be paying just so someone can drop their kid off and they can sit at home. I think if you have a job, then that might be one thing, that you're taking your kid to. But if you're just going to open this up to anybody based on income levels that have a kid. So this is where we're going to have to see in her budget address, there might be more details on this proposal.
To me, I'm a private sector guy. Give incentives to private sector.
Yep.
Now, we have on the phone Rich from Buffalo. Rich, you got a question for Rob? Go right ahead.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. How are you?
I'm good.
Excuse me. Good. Listen, all this good messaging is helpful. It's been going on. He's the leader of the loyal opposition and all that. But where I think a lot of people are asking themselves, well, first of all, how did we lose the Senate in the first place? And number two, what's it going to take to get it back? And then also, how can we empower these local governments to exercise their home rule authorities and start controlling their own municipalities, counties, cities, etc. I mean, and along with that, excuse me a second. Sorry, haven't talked a lot this morning. And along with that, why does New York City get special laws? Why do they get cutouts? Why do they have different judicial article? Why are they exempted? If New York City, the 5 boroughs, can have a different set of state laws on similar topics and policy areas, why can't upstate New York have those? Why we're talking about dividing the state or, separating upstate from downstate, all well and good. But there are ways that we should be getting together to pass a number of laws that help upstate New York. If New York City can have the exemptions, why can't we? And you got the other questions. How did we lose the Senate? How far are we away from getting it? What's it going to take? Because all this is academic, gentlemen. I mean, unless the power shifts, and I've always said, if we can get a controller, even though I like Tom DiNapoli, if we can get a controller, an attorney general, which Western New York, Erie County has had in my generation, if we can at least get a toehold here. Those are a lot of big questions. I'll take my answer off the phone.
Okay, thanks, Rich. Thank you for your call.
Well, thanks, Rich. There's a lot to unpack there, and we probably needed a separate show to answer some of it. But so as far as the numbers we went over, it's 39 right now to 22, so it is a wide margin. We lost it. I mean, the question of how we lost it because I think we were ill-positioned, as this is before I was the leader in 2018, but we were ill-positioned at the wrong time. It would be like having a weak foundation in the middle of a hurricane. 2018 was a bad year. It was the midterm of President Trump's first term. We know historically the party in the White House does not have a great midterm election cycle.
Unfortunately, yeah.
We had a terrible election cycle here in New York. Again, we lost 8 seats. I wasn't in charge of the campaign apparatus back then, so other than just telling you the result, it's hard for me to go into all the specifics of the whys, but I will definitely tell you that I think what we've seen is when President Trump is on the ballot, he brings out a voter that we otherwise have a challenge attracting. And when he's not on the ballot, all the Democrats come out because they're trying to protest vote against him, but there's a section of Republican voters that stay home, and we get walloped sometimes in these cycles. And that is something we are working hard. I know, Chairman, we talk about this, to bring out that voter that we have to understand. If you support President Trump and you come out every 4 years for him, you have to come out in the other years as well so that he can continue to enact the agenda and others who align themselves with him can do what they have to do.
It's extremely difficult this cycle that we keep the House and the Senate. Whether we're going to be able to keep the House is a big question. So if we don't have people go out to vote, and unfortunately this last election,
you saw it.
We saw it.
Yeah, you saw it.
When Republicans don't go out to vote, when blanks don't go out to vote, we lose. And that's what happened in this last cycle. So this cycle, it's so important that everybody get out to vote. If you go to work every day, if you take care of your family, if you're concerned about your children and your grandchildren, you need to vote.
Yes.
And this cycle is extremely important. Certainly, your race, you're up this year. I expect you will get elected by wide margins because of the job you do, but we can't take anything for granted. We have to be activists of our own.
That's exactly right. The energy tends to sometimes be on the party that's out of power because there's a feeling that, we have to do something. We have to get out in the streets. And they, of course, have a lot of activist organizations that they're able to sort of wind up and activate, so to speak, and get them out, get them going. So we have to match that energy, and we have to understand that it's, if you see what's going on in this country, and you see Zoran Mamdani getting elected, that is coming to a place near you if you don't get out and vote. It came to Buffalo. Well, that's right. I mean, but there's other places that I think everyone always thinks it's far away. It's not going to happen to me, or it's not going to happen in my neighborhood. But the reality is, to this last caller, New York City has a huge sway over New York State.
Yes.
I don't know I don't know of any state law that doesn't apply there. I know they have. They need to go to, actually, they have to go to Albany for a lot of things that other cities do not need state approval for. And that was set up years ago by upstate, believe it or not, by upstate Republicans who wanted New York City to have to come to the state to get approvals for different things, because it has always been kind of its own unique place with 8 million people and always teaming with different forces at work there. So a lot of the things that Mamdani wants to do, he's going to need state approval from the legislature and the governor. And so you're going to have some of these fights come to Albany and across the state. But we have got to, what we're doing, I know he said it's academic, but we have to be messaging, because that's how you're going to take it back. If you just hope that people wake up on their own, it's not probably going to happen. We need to be out there and firing people up, educating people, and encouraging them to get out and make a difference.
So, look, Rich has been an advocate for our side for a long time.
No doubt.
And, he pays attention to these things. But I can understand so many people think all politics is bad.
Sure.
I just want to go do my job. Right. But you got to realize the ramifications of that. And the ramifications are clear in New York, with Mamdani, with Sean Ryan,
yep.
with the bail reform,
yep.
with the correction officer situation.
Yep.
There's with the mandate for electric.
Yep.
You could just go on and on and
yes.
on. What we're losing by not having some balance here in New York.
Well, it's funny. You made me think of I like history, and there was an ancient Greek leader, I think it was Pericles, who actually said, you may not take an interest in politics, but be careful that politics doesn't take an interest in you.
Exactly.
And that really is a true statement all these years later, that I realize people want to just live their life and watch the bills and go to work. I get that. I kind of sometimes want to do that too. But the reality is there is a battle out there. There is a fight. There is two sides, or maybe more than even two sides. And they're going to affect your kids' future, your grandkids' future.
I talk to a lot of people, obviously, in my law office. We have 9 lawyers, so I'm kind of intake, and I see a lot of people. And what I find is most people are in that center. Most people, nobody
yes.
that I know wants socialistic
no.
Democrats. They may be Democrat by affiliation because of their parents, or because of a union, or because of something
right.
else.
Right.
But they don't adhere to that. So Western New York is really not at that level, although Mark Poloncarz tries to drag Western New York there to the left.
Certainly does his part, doesn't he?
He certainly does his part. But, getting out to vote is the number one key issue that I'll be harping on from now till that election.
And you need to know, my encouragement to anybody, don't just say, well, I grew up in a Democrat household, and if these issues matter to you, if energy matters to you, if public safety matters to you, then find out the candidate who speaks to that issue and vote accordingly. And I promise you, if you do that, more Republicans will be elected. I have no doubt in my mind.
With the conservative
endorsement, obviously.
Of course.
All right. Look, Rob, I really appreciate this. Was a very good show. A lot of information for everybody. Hopefully you'll be back.
I'll be back, Chairman.
Many times.
I'll be back, Chairman.